Have you ever imagined coming home after a long day, only to be treated like a criminal on your own doorstep? Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Which city, which place do you call home? And if stories about justice, truth, and real human struggles resonate with you, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Because what happened to Naomi could happen to anyone. Now, let me tell you how it all began on the night she thought she was finally returning to the safety of the life she worked so hard to build. Naomi Wilson had always believed that effort, discipline, and honesty would eventually lead to stability. At 30 years old, after years of working double shifts as a certified accountant, saving every spare dollar, skipping vacations, and pushing herself through exhaustion, she finally bought the one thing she once thought was out of reach: a home of her own. A small but elegant house in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where lawns were neatly trimmed and neighbors smiled politely at one another. To Naomi, it wasn't just a building. It was proof that her sacrifices meant something. It was where her future would finally begin. That evening, rain misted softly across the streetlights as she stepped out of her car, shoulders aching from a day that went far longer than it should have. She wanted nothing more than to kick off her shoes, pour a glass of tea, and let silence wrap around her like a blanket. But as she fit her key into the lock, something felt wrong. The key slid in, but wouldn't turn. She tried again, carefully, then harder. Nothing. A small tremor of confusion rippled through her. This lock had always been stubborn, but it had never refused entirely. Rain tapped against her hair as she tried again and again, her hands growing cold. She took a slow breath, told herself not to panic, and stepped around to the back. The backyard was still, the wooden fence damp from the drizzle, the air thick with the smell of wet grass. The back door had a known quirk: the latch sometimes caught if the frame swelled from moisture. A simple nudge with a card usually freed it. She pulled her worn credit card from her pocket, pressed it into the gap, and worked the latch gently. It clicked. She pushed the door open and felt a rush of relief so soft she almost laughed. But the laugh caught in her throat the moment she heard the shouting. "Stop! Hands up! Now!" The words sliced through the air like a blade. Naomi froze, heart slamming inside her chest. She turned slowly, raising her trembling hands, and saw two police officers in the dark, flashlights glaring in her eyes, their hands tight on their weapons. For a moment, her mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. This was her home, her house, her space. But the officers moved toward her with the certainty of men who believed they had caught someone in the middle of a crime. "Ma'am, step away from the door," one of them barked. "We got a report of someone trying to break into this residence." Naomi's voice cracked as she tried to speak. "This is my residence," she insisted, her breath shivering with fear. "I live here. I'm unlocking my own house. I have the keys." She reached toward her pocket, but the officers shouted again, ordering her not to move. Rain dripped from her face as she forced herself still. She tried to speak calmly, tried to explain, tried to show them the keyring dangling visibly from her hand. But her words echoed into the storm, unheard. "If this is your home," one officer said sharply, "you'll need to prove it." Before she could answer, before she could reach for her ID, they were already pulling her wrists behind her back, snapping cold metal onto her skin. Her knees hit the wet ground, the mud sinking into her clothes, her body trembling, more from disbelief than the cold. She heard a window open somewhere nearby, then another, voices whispering, someone murmuring, "I knew something was off." She kept repeating that she lived there, that this was her address, her mortgage, her key in the door. But all she received in return were statements that blurred into a fog of rigid protocol and mistrust. Within minutes, Naomi was being led away from the home she had dreamed of, her wrists bound, her dignity trailing behind her on the rain-soaked pavement. The ride to the station was a haze of fear and shock, her thoughts circling the same impossible question: how could she be accused of stealing something she owned, something she had built her life around obtaining? Hours later, after paperwork, questions, and a bail process that drained what little strength she had left, Naomi stepped back into the night. She returned to the quiet street where her house stood, still and silent, as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. She knew it the moment she looked at her doorway. the place where her life had split in two. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of a battle she never chose. A battle she couldn't walk away from. And as she stood there, the weight of the night pressing onto her shoulders, she understood something with chilling clarity. What happened to her was only the beginning, and clearing her name would not be enough. She would have to fight for the right to exist in the home she had earned. And the fight was just beginning. Naomi files a formal complaint for unlawful arrest, believing that the truth will finally set things straight. But almost immediately, the situation turns against her. The police report describes her as aggressive and claims she refused to cooperate, painting a version of events she hardly recognizes. The neighbor who made the call insists he had never seen her before, and that she didn't look like someone who lived there. Even the realtor who sold her the house suddenly becomes difficult to reach, offering no statement that might confirm her ownership. Online, the story spreads fast, stripped of context and twisted into something sensational. Woman arrested for breaking into home. Few bother to read further. Even fewer realize the home in question is hers. At work, the shift is subtle but sharp. Some colleagues offer quiet sympathy, awkward and hesitant. Others whisper behind her back, pretending not to stare when she walks by. Naomi feels the weight of assumptions, the silent questions, the doubt that clings to her like a shadow. She hires an attorney, Mr. Ellis, who tells her with a calm seriousness that they must gather evidence strong enough to dismantle the false narrative piece by piece. They acquire the body cam footage, and for the first time, Naomi watches the moment she was arrested through the officer's eyes. She sees herself calmly explaining, sees her hands raised, sees no resistance at all. And yet, the officers move on her with certainty, as though the outcome was already written before they arrived. At the same time, the neighbor persists, repeating that she cannot possibly be the owner because he knows everyone here. His confidence is unsettling, as though her presence alone disrupts his idea of the neighborhood. Stress swallows her days. She digs through files, collecting mortgage documents, insurance papers, bank transfers, every email exchanged with the realtor, every signed form, every legal proof that the house belongs to her. But the more evidence she gathers, the more hostility seems to rise around her. One afternoon, she discovers a folded note inside her mailbox, scribbled with the words, "We protect our neighborhood." No name, no explanation, just a threat wrapped in politeness. Anonymously, someone online writes that she doesn't fit the area, hinting that some people prefer their suburb untouched and challenged unchanged. Naomi senses a pattern forming, a line connecting every accusation, every whisper, every suspicious glance. And then, just when everything seems to be closing in, a quiet revelation slips through the pressure. A young officer named Carson asks to speak privately. His voice is low, careful, almost afraid of being heard. He admits there had been a circulated notice earlier that week about a possible intruder spotted in the neighborhood. The description was vague, and the dispatcher sent the information without clarifying that the person seen near the houses could have been a resident. Carson tells her he feels guilty, that things escalated too quickly, that assumptions filled the gaps where facts should have been. Naomi listens, heart pounding. She realizes the truth is more complicated and far more dangerous than she initially thought. It wasn't just one neighbor's suspicion. It was a chain of biases, half-truths, and preconceptions that shaped the narrative long before she touched her own locked door. She thanks Carson, but his confession lingers in her mind like a warning. If the system already chose a story, how does she prove the real one? Yet, even as pressure tightens around her, something fierce rises inside her. She refuses to surrender the home she worked for, the dignity she earned, the identity others are trying to rewrite. She continues gathering every piece of proof she can find, building a foundation under her feet, one document at a time, even as the world around her seems determined to push her out. The story of Naomi Wilson finally reaches the local news. A journalist decides to cover her case, highlighting the shocking fact that a woman was arrested at the threshold of her own home. On air, the reporter presents the evidence. Property documents proving Naomi's ownership, footage from the police body camera showing her calm compliance, Officer Carson's admission of the mistake and the timeline of events that reveal how quickly assumptions turned against her. The broadcast ignites an immediate storm of public reaction, with hundreds of comments pouring in ranging from outrage to disbelief. People discuss the injustice and the careless bias that allowed this to happen. The police department is forced to issue a public apology, and the officers involved in Naomi's arrest are temporarily suspended pending investigation. The neighbor who called the authorities claims he did not intend harm, but his words are drowned in the backlash and criticism. Naomi's home, once a place of humiliation and fear, slowly becomes a symbol of restored justice. She wins her legal case, receives compensation, and, most importantly, reclaims her reputation and her name. Over the following months, Naomi organizes a community meeting focused on addressing bias and recognizing microaggressions, determined to create awareness and change where it is possible. She speaks calmly, encouraging dialogue, sharing her experience, and helping others understand how easily assumptions can lead to injustice. In the final moments, Naomi stands on the porch of her house, the place that once trapped her in humiliation, now a space of quiet strength. She looks out at her neighborhood with steady eyes, knowing she has weathered the storm and defended her right simply to exist without suspicion. Her courage and perseverance remind everyone that justice can prevail, even against overwhelming odds. And to all of you watching, wherever you are, who have felt judged or dismissed, remember that standing up for the truth matters. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support more stories like Naomi's.